Hello, everyone. My name is Alex Moldovan. Today, I'll be speaking with Francis Grunow. Francis, how are you doing today?
Great, Alex. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk about Detroit and the Nain Rouge and other things. So, yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Excellent. So first, I just wanted to get a little bit of background on you and kind of what your relationship to Detroit is.
Yeah, so I am born and bred Detroiter. I was the product of a meeting in Ghana, West Africa, actually. So my dad, who's from here, actually from the Dearborn area, met my mom in Ghana, and she's from Scotland. So her family is from overseas, and my dad's side of the family is from the Detroit area. So I actually had 2 years in West Africa at the beginning of my life, but then came here with them and grew up in Detroit, grew up on the northwest side of Detroit in like the Rosedale Park neighborhood. Actually, the part of the subdivision was called Minnock Park. So we went to Burt Elementary School, and then I went to Ludington Middle School, and then to Cass Tech, which is downtown. And I went away to college. So this was in 1992, and went to New York City to go to Columbia University for undergraduate. And I always thought I was going to be an urban planner because in high school, my curriculum, we had curriculums in high school, had a final project, and the project was about anything you really wanted to have it be about, but just it needed I think it was like 100-page research paper by the end of it. And I was kind of struggling. I remember struggling to sort of think about what it was I was going to do. And I remember looking out from the 6th or 7th floor of Cass Tech over the lower Cass corridor at the time and seeing so many abandoned buildings, and just started wondering, like, why is this? And it got me asking all these questions about Detroit's history and its architecture. And it kind of like led me on this whole path of, kind of that I'm still following now. So I went to New York City to study cities and planning, and ended up working as a planner in New York City for a few years before moving back to Detroit in 2001. And since that time, I've been involved in all sorts of different projects because I ended up, after being a planner in New York, deciding that I really didn't necessarily want to have that be the rest of my life. It was a great experience, but I decided to do other things, and a lot of it has been involved with like community organizations and community development and architecture. I continued to pursue that. I ran the historic preservation organization in Detroit for a while. I started a small business, a small retail business. I also went back to law school at Wayne State University. And then since law school, I've been more, I would say, more involved, at least professionally speaking, in kind of public policy matters, and how community development and different aspects of how the city sort of has been able to economically recover or sustain itself, and doing that on a community, like a neighborhood level, a community-wide level. And that's just one sort of discrete aspect of what I've been doing, but I'll leave it sort of there. I've been working in Detroit for the last over 20 years on a number of different projects. We'll talk about some of those, I
hmm
guess.
Um, so you were kind of talking about what kind of brought you back to
Mm-hmm.
Detroit. I guess I wanted to like a little bit maybe elaborate on that. I mean, is it kind of
Mm-hmm.
was it sort of like this general like love for Detroit? Maybe it was sort of like growing up here, or was it that maybe also coupled with maybe, I mean, did you feel maybe a sense of duty or responsibility? Like personally, I know that for me, when I view sort of redevelopment in Detroit, it almost feels like Detroit is sort of a microcosm for the rest of our country. And I wonder how you kind of feel about that.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's a few of those things that you hit on. I definitely, as I said a few minutes ago, in terms of having this kind of path from high school really to sort of see the city as a project or as a place that, you know, was definitely not functioning in a way that was serving its people effectively. I mean, like I took the bus downtown for high school, and you could see all the abandonment and the infrastructure that had been disinvested in over time. I knew that things in this place were had been struggling and were kind of needing attention. And I thought at the time that one way to do that was through sort of this top-down approach of like, we need better planning and we need better, sort of thinking about decision making. And it's not that I disagree with those things, but that was sort of like my rigid mindset. And over time, I've sort of developed this idea that a lot of what Detroit, well, what I think Detroit is struggling with is kind of a belief in itself, more of like a hearts and minds campaign as opposed to like this technocratic, we need to do this here, because you need people to really believe in something, and you need people to want to work in a certain way that's coordinated, that gets to better outcomes, and that also brings resources in a way that is equitable for people who are already there. So it's a messy kind of concoction that I'm still learning it. Honestly, this is not the final word on anything. It's been an evolution. So to get back to your question, it was a sort of combination of this theory that I have been working through in terms of my interests, sort of academically and intellectually, this kind of emotional thing, which is, this is where I'm from, and I want to help it. I want to work with it. I want to improve it for the people that are here and the people that might come here. The sense of like duty to a place, or feeling like you're honoring a place that you're from. I think there's some of that too. Pride of place and wanting your hometown to succeed. All of those things I think play a role.
And then that kind of leads me into um, the March of the Nain Rouge. I know that you are
Yeah.
the organizer and co-founder of the
Yes.
march, and I was wondering real quick before I actually have a few questions I want to ask about it, but I guess before I do that, could you explain what the March of the Nain Rouge is?
Sure. I can try to. Um,
Right. So,
Other people might have different explanations, but
mhm.
and that's partly by design and also just the way it's evolved itself. But when I was in law school, or just ending law school, I should say, a friend of mine and I were having a conversation about how, Detroit at that time, so this was like 2009, 10, that era, was really suffering from like a crisis of leadership. That was during the Kwame Kilpatrick era. And also at city council, there were a number of folks who, were charged with, taking bribes. Just there was a lot of unfortunate corruption and things going on that really put the city in a bad spot. And this was before bankruptcy, but we could sort of see the writing on the wall a little bit in terms of where the city was headed, both economically and from a leadership standpoint. And the financial crisis nationally was also, in the grips of its, taking people's houses away, and just really people were struggling, and nationally, but especially in Detroit. So this friend and I had these conversations about just kind of like imagining what Detroit might need or could use, or this kind of emotional question of like how you get a place sort of back on track and giving people, its citizens, a sense of hope. Um, and you could take that conversation in so many different ways, from like policy to injecting it with new businesses. There's all sorts of different ways to approach something like that. But he had just come from New Orleans and Mardi Gras. He had family there, and he posed the question of well, New Orleans had this thing, Katrina, this terrible hurricane that devastated it, and that the first Mardi Gras after Katrina was such a relief for people. They hadn't had it for a year, and when they finally had it, there was this palpable sense of just like a release, and they could all come out and celebrate. And they knew things were bad. They knew that the city was in really bad shape, and it would be a long struggle to get back to sort of some sense of normalcy. But that tradition of coming out to celebrate, and doing it together as a community was like very, very important, and he could feel it. And that got us talking about, well, why doesn't Detroit have something like that? Or could Detroit have something like that? And if it did, what would it look like? And you know, what would be the elements of it? And the reason that's also so powerful is, or just, maybe not so powerful, but maybe the reason that makes sense in some ways is because Detroit and a place like New Orleans have this early history of like French colonialism and coming to these cities with an initial French sort of culture. And in New Orleans, that took one kind of path. There was also, the Spanish and slavery and trade with the Gulf, and kind of an earlier rise economically. And then with Detroit, the fur trade and England, and there's some differences, but that sort of key element of the French beginning was definitely the same. And Detroit is actually older than New Orleans by about 10 years. And the guy who founded Detroit, Cadillac, actually, after being in Detroit, was sent down to Louisiana to govern there. So there were some interesting other historical connections. And then this thing with the Nain Rouge was something that I had been, I'd known about. I don't know if it's something that you had ever heard about. Not a lot of people know about it, but enough people know. And it's this original legend of the city, which is when Cadillac came to the New World, or when he was sent by the king, and they stopped in Canada, or what would become Canada, Quebec, and were planning to sort of move on into the what would become the Northwest Territory. He was partying, or it was late at night, and the story is that he was stopped by or they let a woman in who was a fortune teller, and I don't know if they were like playing cards and or drinking whiskey, or who knows, and who knows if any of this is true. But the story is that she read people's fortunes, and his fortune was that he would found a great city, but it would come at a cost, and blah blah blah. It was all of the sort of like um, origin story kind of thing. But one of the things she said was, regard the Nain Rouge, and don't offend the Nain Rouge, or you'll be cursed. And he was like, screw that, or whatever he said. I mean, who knows what he said, but he took that, and when he finally comes to Detroit and does, the things that he was hoping to do, as far as get a settlement going and start, expanding it and giving it to some of the folks that came with him, as far as like letting, farm um, grants happen and some of the original families. He apparently does run into the Nain Rouge, and he does offend the Nain Rouge, and the Nain Rouge does curse him and Detroit. And so that story is like, what does that mean? Like what's behind that? Is the Nain Rouge, what is the Nain Rouge and its curse on Detroit mean? Because it's kind of this damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. It's a city that we all care about, or at least theoretically, and it's cursed. So like, does the curse of the Nain Rouge mean that we have to like do something about the Nain Rouge? The Nain Rouge also throughout history has appeared when bad things happen. So when the fire of 1805 or Battle of Bloody Run or some of these, historical events, the Nain Rouge is supposed to be around and appears and kind of like laughs at the city's misfortune. So it's been known as the harbinger of doom. So all of this to say is like, it's kind of this rich backstory that you can kind of like use, and it really gets people out of the headspace of today in some ways, and allows people to understand that the city is over 300 years old and has a rich, rich history of all these different people and stories, and that the Nain Rouge as kind of like this boogeyman element, like, don't offend the Nain Rouge, or like the Nain Rouge, is out to get you, or, regard the Nain Rouge, whatever you think, you can, or we use that and that history as being a way, that history and legend, so both of those things, as being a way to tap into this idea of what Mardi Gras might look like in Detroit. So if the Nain Rouge really did curse Detroit, and people knew that from the beginning, and they were like, oh, the Nain Rouge, be careful of the Nain Rouge, then maybe they had this tradition of like, rising up against the Nain Rouge, or like, trying to avoid the Nain Rouge, or the Nain Rouge might have been known to have hatched plans over the years to, take the city down. And so we just started playing with that idea and just sort of evolved that over, the course of the last 10 years. Last year was the 10th year, where the Nain Rouge now, this is how we, present it, appears, and people come dressed up in costumes so that the Nain Rouge doesn't recognize you. So it's whatever you think you can wear to avoid the Nain Rouge's wrath that year, and that creates all sorts of things. And the Nain Rouge comes and hatches a plan and tells Detroiters what he's going to do for this year. And it's been all sorts of crazy things, like from running for emergency manager to having the Russians hack all of Detroit's corporate interests and having the Russians take over, to having a fire-breathing dragon, to it's all sorts of craziness, and people have generally responded pretty well to it. And one of the things, I'll stop here for a breath so you can ask the next question, but the thing that I love most about it in terms of what I see is how people react every year to it, as far as being creative, sort of this personal creative self-expression in their costumes, and they come out and as neighborhood sort of themes, and just the variety of ways that people celebrate really the city. And it's the first Sunday in spring, so it's timed to that, and it's the first time and place where you can come outside. Maybe it's March, late March, so it's still pretty, you can have snow or 60-degree weather. It's kind of Michigan time, but it's also supposed to be a time where people come and celebrate the city and self-express themselves in the streets, and there's no cost to it. It's free. So I just love to see how people respond every year to it. That's the funnest part for me.
Yeah. So kind of sounds like this march, like you were saying, is an attempt at Detroit's own Mardi Gras. You know,
Right.
maybe we haven't had a hurricane, but we've had plenty of, I guess you could say, different types of destruction. I suppose I
Yes.
don't know if
Yes. Mm-hmm.
that. And uh, I guess okay. And then was also kind of one. So did you kind of describe like what the Nain Rouge, like what is he? I
Mm-hmm.
know I've done my research on this, but could you kind of like
Mm-hmm.
describe like I know he's supposed to be this cursed thing, but like what exactly like is like this Nain
Yeah.
Rouge?
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. I think some of the stories from the early part, and we don't actually have any, as far as I know anyway, there's no accounts of the Nain Rouge from the earliest parts of the city. These are all stories that were ascribed to the first parts of the city. There's no like contemporary historical document that describes the Nain Rouge. So it's really a speculative matter, and it's something that I think people would say is some combination of like French lore and Native American kind of um, belief system in terms of like some of the spirit sort of world, and it's a mashup of those things possibly. So the French have this tradition of these things called lutin or hobgoblins or kind of like spirits or sprites that are mischievous, um, and they like will like push over the cow in the barn or do something unexplained and kind of like not not deadly necessarily, but definitely annoying um, and a lot of people, sort of like talk about that as being part of it. When you're in a new place and there's strange things out there, and you don't necessarily know, why something happened. You can explain it away with this kind of like malevolent, force or whatever. So there's that idea, and then I guess from the Native American side, there are these spirits that are ascribed to like places, like the river gods or the forest, spirits or whatever. And um, one of the stories I believe is that the son of the river god is kind of this mischievous um, spirit, which has the attributes of the Nain Rouge as well. Like you can't, or you shouldn't, you should not offend it. You should regard it. Sort of the ideas that the fortune teller might have conveyed. And so when you go against it, it can lash back and curse you. So I think both of those things kind of like play out in how the
Mm,
story has evolved, and the manifestation of it is like this kind of creature that it's called Nain, which means in French it's dwarf, and then rouge is just red, so the red dwarf, and those have turned into like one of the stories has like um, gleaming or sort of cold gleaming eyes and rough ragged teeth and um, furry boots and kind of this haggard kind of expression, with a kind of high cackling laugh. And I don't know, does that sound scary? Does that sound something you want to run across? Probably not. But you can sort of see that kind of manifestation emerging. And then more recently, people have gone in all sorts of different directions with it. Not, I mean, all kind of in that world of like impish, um, kind of cackling, demonish, kind of fiendish figure. We at one of the first ones, we had the Nain Rouge appearing on the roof of some buildings, kind of just like popping up, and that was something that had harkened back to I think some stories from like the I don't know from the 1960s, like when the um, during the rioting of 1967, when there was like people seeing it in the telephone poles, or maybe that was like during a ice storm. It's written in some books, and you can see and sort of decide for yourself how
Right.
you conceive of the Nain Rouge. We have a character that kind of has this um, excessively sort of angry face, and is dressed up in the different costumes that we sort of that you know the Nain Rouge has as a plan for Detroit's destruction every year. Um, so like one year he came as in a flight suit, um, like he just landed on an aircraft carrier, because he had mission accomplished, you know, in Detroit's destruction. And under that, he had a Hawaiian shirt because he was going to go for vacation because we were so lame. Um, you know, the politician, one year he came as this corporate, you know, in a red fire suit from like um, car racing, you know, with all the corporate logos on it. So he was sponsored by all of his evil empire companies, which were basically just takes off of Detroit companies. So I can send you some of those, and if those help, you know, you can put
Yeah,
them up
that
at
would be pretty cool. I
top.
Googled a few
Yeah,
pictures of him and to like
yeah,
look at his costume and stuff like that from the different years. So it kind of
yeah,
sounds like the Name Rouge figure kind of pops up these different parades. Um, it's like, in a sense, am I kind of correct in the interpretation? It's sort of like you're defeating him in an attempt to sort of maybe lift the curse that people kind of
right,
feel has been placed upon Detroit,
right.
right? Yeah, that's
Hmm.
really cool. Um, you were talking about like how the Nain Rouge has different outfits and there's different like themes for the parade. Um, so I guess now I kind of want to ask like how has this march kind of like changed over the years since when you started and like how do you guys kind of determine what the theme is going to be for each year?
It's a good question. I wish I could answer that, um, because I don't know sometimes. um, it's like an ongoing conversation with like a few people, and you know, we kind of like try to look at what's been going on, you know, and try to make it current, in terms of like current events or things that, you know, are things that hold the city back that we can sort of make light of or turn into part of the narrative. So that is definitely like a part of how we approach it, is just basically what's been in the news the last year, or you know, what are things that people have been talking about, um, and then that theme, if that's what you can call it, it turns into at least a big banner at the end, because that's where the um, plan is revealed at the steps of the Masonic temple. So we hand paint a huge, it's usually like 25 or 30 feet wide by about the same tall, big sort of square banner that hangs over this porch of the Masonic temple, because at the end, everybody goes into the Masonic temple for a dance party. So it's just kind of like the big rally at the end. And the banners relate to kind of what they have the Nain Rouge talking about, or what they have the Nain Rouge, you know, projecting as the you know, the plan for Detroit's destruction. Um, Last year we had, or the last year that we did it, it was the 10th anniversary. So the Nain Rouge basically had a self-reflective moment where he realized that, you know, he was uh, that we needed him as much as he needed us, and you know, we actually invited him into the party at the end. But we'll see how that plays out, because the last year hasn't been really great for people, has it? So maybe that was a
He
mistake.
has fingers crossed on his back. We've seen it.
Yeah, so maybe we do need the Nain Rouge to be the, you know, the thing that holds us back. We don't know. That could have been a bad move. The year before that, it was like fake news, and that was, you know, the thing. he had a news truck that was all pumping out, lies and conspiracy theories. So it's just kind of like,
It's kind of timely.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So that's kind of how you guys develop the theme each year.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah,
And that's also kind of reflected in like, because I remember seeing a picture of like a giant like cockroach or something. Like it's like he
yeah,
kind of has like a different thing that he kind of rides in on or something every year. Is that like,
yeah, yeah. We have it when we can figure it out and afford it. Like now we have a 30-foot our former RV that's actually parked in our personal backyard, that we've used the last 3 years or so to have as kind of the chariot for the Nain Rouge, and we build on that kind of like the different themes. We've had the fire breathing dragon, as I mentioned, that wasn't built for the parade, but we kind of modified it a little bit.
mhm.
Um, that actually has gone to Burning Man a few times. That's the big festival in the desert, and I think is in Las Vegas now. That was just an incredible piece done by a local artist, where they took I think it was a former dump truck and then turned the chassis into the framework for the body of the dragon. The cockroach came the year after that, and that was something that we funded. Um, the parade funded, and that was the same artist, and his idea was, well, how do you top a fire breathing dragon? Well, you can't. So what do you do next? You do a cockroach, and the cockroach mobile is kind of like symbolic of you can't kill something, so they took and that's Detroit too, sort of like you can't kill the spirit of the city. So the cockroach mobile was a former Honda Civic, I think, that had been in several car accidents, and was totaled. So they took all of the body out of it and rebuilt the frame, and then put the legs on it, and kind of the head it's all built out of trash. We work with this partner who runs the recycling program, for Detroit Recycle here, and they've been really great partners and have helped creatively. They've hosted the banner painting a few times, and the artist is the artist in residence there. Doyle Hughes is his name, and he built the cockroach mobile there. That year was also, I think, the year when, or it was like the year after when the Mad Max remake came out. So he appeared with like a Mad Max costume, like a um, you know leather jacket, and kind of like metal stuff all around, and
Yeah,
that was a
the
fun year. Yeah,
fire. Did he have like a flamethrower guitar or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
cool? Um, let's see my questions here. Because actually this is kind of cool. I'll ask you a question and then you're good at answering questions. Like you'll answer like a question that I have next. I'm like, oh, look at that. Like you're anticipating what I'm gonna ask, which is good. I like that.
Oh,
Um,
good.
the only thing is I have to kind of like find one now. Okay. Um, so trying to think how to ask this question. What So we've kind of talked about like the history of the Nain Rouge. We've talked about like what the festival's kind of been like over the past couple of years and like what the celebration's kind of about. And I was wondering, what has like the experience been as like the co-founders, like what has it kind of been like, sort of the behind the scenes of it? Like what is the situation with regards to like how does the Nain Rouge March, how does it kind of intersect with like other festivities in Detroit? How does it intersect with um, like financially, like how does it go, like kind of like raising the money to kind of, because I imagine
Yeah,
there must be some
that's
kind
a
of
good
cost
question.
associated with running the
Really good
festival.
question. Yeah, no, that I appreciate you asking that. Um, so the first year, it was basically just me and my credit card. I mean, other people helped too, and we've had lots of both financial and non-financial help. But it started with just a few hundred people, and I think it was like a few $100s. Maybe it was like $1,000 altogether. But really, the reason the financing of it is important is because it's an officially endorsed City of Detroit project, and that was always something from the very beginning. We wanted to have, you need a permit to do a parade, and otherwise, the city can say no, you can't. They can stop because what we do is we close down the street to allow people to participate in the march. So the permitting, doesn't necessarily, if you're small, it doesn't necessarily cost a lot of money, but if it gets bigger, it can quickly become thousands and thousands of dollars. So the first year, we went and got the permit for two or three things. One of them was the parade permit, which gives you police presence, and then the other thing is we had a fire element at the end where the fire department had to approve of it, which is kind of funny because fires happen all over the city for both planned and unplanned reasons. But if you're doing it officially through the city, they need to see that this like fire barrel is going to be safe.
Yeah.
So so that has started a relationship with the city that's ongoing. And I have to be honest, when we first presented the idea, they were like, "What are you gonna do?" And it was a it was kind of a interesting conversation that first time, explaining the story and kind of like this demonic figure, and then there's this fire at the end. We actually, the first year, we had an effigy that we put into the fire. We were a little bit more hardcore maybe. And that has evolved because that part of the story has shifted away from we still have fire as elements. In fact, we have more fire now, but it's more as performance art. And the parade permit has grown, and that also results in like insurance, and the insurance is a part of the cost. And we have vendors, and that also has costs. So all to say, as the parade has evolved, we have created a nonprofit organization that goes along with it, that allows for us to raise money to support it. And one of the partner that's been with us the longest is MDI, that's Midtown Detroit Inc., who are sort of like the community development organization for Midtown. And their president, Sue Mosey, has been a long time supporter and fan of the event, because they see a component where what we're trying to do helps businesses along the way. That was always been a thing for us to as well, to highlight the local businesses that we walk by. So the restaurants and bars and now retail shops that line the it's between Canfield and Second, and then down to the Masonic Temple. So that area has grown quite a bit in the last few, over the last decade, and we're really happy that we've been able to get sponsors to help cover the costs of the parade. Something like the parade, you could probably put easily $50,000 into something like this. Our budget has been less than that, but we'd like to grow, and it could be something that we do in multiple, like we've done other events. We do a light parade sometimes with Light Up Livernois during the Design Fest in September. We've hosted workshops for neighborhoods and kids to like learn how to make costumes. We've worked really closely with this partner called Caribbean Mardi Gras Productions, and they do like this really cool mashup of Trinidadian costumes, which are like very large structures that they've that this guy Ralph Taylor, the head of it, designs, and they act as kind of like these incredible backdrops for dancers to like maneuver and walk down. If you look at pictures of the parade, or look at like Carnival in South America or in the islands, you can see some examples. And he's done a lot of workshops for us to teach people how to use rigid elements like metal and fiberglass, combined with like really light elements like um, mylar or fabric. He uses a lot of feathers to create, like huge wings or other kinds of like, appendages that really are incredible. So we have a bunch of different components that have grown over the time, and it's an organization now. So I act as like the director of that. But I rarely get paid for it, which is fine, but it could be something that could grow to someone's real job at some point. So that's what the possibilities are. It's really hard during COVID to really know what the future looks like. We had to cancel it this year in March, and it was one of the, you mentioned how we coordinate with other events. We looked at St. Patrick's Day, and we always kind of defer to St. Patrick's Day, which is often the week before. And some of the folks that work in that come out for this parade. We've gotten a lot of like organizational partnerships and friends, and some of the people that work with St. Patty's work with us, and some of the people that a lot of the people that work with like Theater Bazaar, the event in the fall, like around Halloween, if you're familiar with that, work with us on creative stuff. But it's been so hard with COVID because we were one of the first to cancel after St. Patty's did. And they did it just like a few days before. And we were like a week out, and we were like, we have to do,
Mhm.
and the city was basically saying like, we, we, we need you to cancel this event. And then we were sharing emails recently because the Thanksgiving parade just got scaled back again, and Mardi Gras got canceled in New Orleans, and it's sort of like looking very likely that we won't be able to do a physical event. So we're kind of like the bookends, hopefully, of COVID, and we'll see what either later on in the year next year, or maybe 2022 look like. So it's been kind of a weird time currently, and hard to
Mhm.
exactly know what the future looks like.
Yeah. Um, that actually does kind of lead me to my next question. I was actually going to ask about like how COVID, sort of affected
Mhm.
the parade like this year. I imagine it could affect the following years. I have to wonder what the culture surrounding mass gatherings will look like, you know,
Yeah,
going
I don't
forward.
even know if we'll be able to get a permit or insured. I can't do the event in good conscience without either of those things,
Mhm.
because ultimately I want to do them again. And it's so hard at this point. If it was today, we couldn't do it, and hopefully the vaccine comes out around that time in a mass way where a lot of people are getting vaccinated, but that's
Mhm.
probably not going to um, be effective on a community-wide basis until like summer sometime, it
Yeah.
looks like. So um, we we were in this interesting position where, because of our timing for this past year, we basically got all of the event planned, or most of it planned, in as much as way we can. We're doing stuff until the very last minute every year, but we were planning on doing it until like 10 days out. So we were able to get sponsors and get the sort of plan ready. We actually created a banner, a second banner, for COVID, like very, very quickly and put that up just without anybody present, um, which was kind of this tongue-in-cheek take on people wearing masks, and it's like, keep your cooties to yourself, wash your hands. So we did do that, but in terms of having some resources, we're actually sponsored for an event, but now it seems like it won't likely happen in March, and we want to honor those sponsorships sometime, and we'll figure out a way to do that.
Yeah, I wonder if, like worst case scenario, if you guys had to like wait another year, I wonder if like, I'm just like, because I can, like, I do kind of have a like creative mind where I'm always like thinking like, oh, what about this? I'm just like imagining like a festival where like the name Rouge brought the, I don't know if this would be like
Yeah.
politically correct or whatever, but maybe like brought it into Detroit or something like that.
Right.
I don't know, he's like
Well, even last night we were joking with some friends about how it could be like a bunch of uh, funeral marches or something.
oh my goodness.
I mean, but I don't know. There's always a plethora of ideas, and we have to sort of like figure out what kind of
Yeah,
pushes the buttons but works best.
yeah. Maybe he's like a mad scientist, like a bioweapon or something. I don't
Right.
know. Because
Right.
like that does kind of seem to be the theme with the name Rouge, is like taking these things that are like these bad events, but then kind of, I mean, it almost seems like a humorous parade, you
Oh
know?
yeah, it definitely. It's very much so, and I think that's also during these last 4 years, it's been kind of hard. It's a very satirical, ironical thing that if you see it without going to it, if you just sort of see it, you kind of like, what is going on? But it's very tongue in cheek, and it's about sort of making fun of ourselves and our own sort of situation, and being able to have one day where you're kind of like lighthearted about it in a way that acknowledges it. Like, you're not trying to not acknowledge it. In fact, you're kind of leaning into it, but doing it in a way that allows people to make fun of the situation and themselves, and hopefully make them feel better ultimately about the world. So yeah, it's definitely satire, but satire's been kind of hard just because it's real life. you
Yeah.
so there's this article I was reading about, like, is satire dead? And I don't think it's dead, but you
It's
might
hard
have
to
to.
do.
Yeah.
How do you do satire when your government kind of
Yeah.
feels like it's just constantly
Yeah,
comedy
exactly.
show sort of thing?
Exactly.
How do you be
Exactly.
funnier than what actually happens?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes
So
sense.
we've got our work cut out for us. But we've got lots of material.
Yeah, that's true.
Mhm.
Um, okay, well, I mean, that pretty much was most of my questions there. So I guess to kind of wrap it up, we kind of talked about where it might be going forward, how it's kind of not really, nothing seems to be really definite right now, but it does
Right.
kind of, so, so I guess the last question I would have to ask is just, where can people sort of, follow the march like online? Is there like a
Yeah.
way to contact you, perhaps for like, inquiries surrounding the march?
Yeah. So we have a Facebook. We were active on Facebook, or relatively active on Facebook, and that's just Marche du Nain Rouge. And we also have a website that we update in the lead up to the parade. So the Marche du Nain Rouge dot, I think it's org, I'm pretty sure, is the website. And people can email. We have a committee structure that is mostly volunteer, and we definitely always are interested in getting new folks involved, and there's opportunities for different activities, and you can be very helpful, extraordinarily helpful as a parade marshal, or helping paint something, or selling merchandise, or whatever. So we're always looking out for folks, and you can email through the website.
All right, that sounds good, Francis. So
Great.
thanks for that contact information. Thank you for all of the for answering like all of my questions about the name Rouge and about the march. hopefully going forward, if not this year or this following year, hopefully the next one
Yeah.
we can see
Yeah.
another, we can see the return of the name. I'm
Yeah.
sure
Exactly.
there's a lot of
Exactly.
mischief he's been causing behind the scenes. So it'd be nice
Thank
to
you.
defeat him.
And thank you. And in the meantime, we have here. I'll put my thing down. The
How was that?
upcoming Krampus. Do you know
Okay,
this? It's not the Nain Rouge. Do you know the
right.
story of Krampus, the Christmas sort of demon story from the Alps?
Mhm.
That's the next one coming up.
Yeah,
Sort of
yeah.
the all
Krampus has been causing some trouble. That's for
right,
sure. Wonder what
right,
Christmas will be like this year.
exactly. So look out, one way or another. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Alex.
Yeah. All right. You have a good day, friends.
Thanks. You too. Take care.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.